We are just 6 months away from the midterm elections, but the way election seasons are defined now, you'd think that would mean we'd be well into campaign season. You think that's all we'd be talking about by now. But so far, not so much. There's been a low hum of discussion about the midterms, but no real roar as of yet. That is something the Democratic Party looks to be hoping to change, rolling out a $50 million campaign to kick off the 2010 season this week, beginning with a personal message to Democratic Party supporters from the president on Monday.
It will be up to each of you to make sure that the young people, African Americans, Latinos, and women who powered our victory in 2008 stand together once again.
If that sounds to you like fairly anodyne, typical voter outreach talk, that's because you have dared step outside the conservative echo chamber. The Washington Examiner front page screamed after this, "Obama disses white guys." The RNC declared, quote, "Our post-racial president made an appeal based on class warfare and race." And the conservative punditocracy just let loose.
This is the regime at its racist best. What's the regime doing? Asking blacks and Latinos to join him in a fight.
What's with the racially charged rallying cry?
What he's doing is saying, you have reason to fear on racial grounds, therefore vote for me. I think he is using racial anxiety for political gain.
In conserva world, appealing to minority voters to come out to vote is racist. If logic is logic and logic knows no political affiliation, then that racism allegation would appear to present a problem for, say, RNC Chairman Michael Steele, who said just last week in a speech that Republicans, quote, have lost sight of the historic integral link between the party and African Americans. I guess also Senator John Ensign was racist when he said, quote, we have to reach out to Hispanics. I also guess Republican presidential candidate John McCain was racist when he opined everything about our Hispanic voters is tailor-made to the Republican message. I guess also presumably Ronald Reagan was racist when he reached out to Hispanics declaring, quote, Latinos are Republican, they just don't know it yet. It's a funny thing about boomerangs, you know. They are very hard to catch and they hurt when they come back. Joining us now for the interview is the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, former governor of Virginia, Tim Kaine. Governor Kaine, it's nice to have you back on the show.
Thanks
Rachel.
For
being here.
Great to be with you.
What's your response to accusations that it is racist for Democrats to encourage minority voter turnout in the next election?
That the accusations are ridiculous and that the Republicans are trying to change the subject. We rolled out a midterm plan that basically lays out a pretty clear message, Rachel, of the two parties. The Democrats are the results party. We're doing the heavy lifting to do economic recovery, health reform, and Wall Street reform. And the Republicans are the obstruction party, standing in the way, trying to block progress. Pretty simple message, but what the Republicans want to do is throw around claims of race baiting, et cetera, because they don't want to talk about the issue of are you for results or are you trying to do the heavy lifting to help Americans, or are you trying to throw up a smokescreen? They're good at the smokescreens.
Well, the National Republican Congressional Committee and the RNC both went after you specifically today. When the Wall Street Journal printed this as advanced text of a speech of yours today, they said, quote, we know, they ascribed to you this quote, we know the Republican Party still seeks to suppress the vote and initiate arbitrary challenges, particularly challenging minority and low-income voters. They went after you as dealing the race card by doing that. Was that part of your speech? What did you mean? What do you make of that accusation?
That was in the prepared remarks that we distributed to a number of reporters. You know, a lot of folks who watch the show, Rachel, may not be aware, the RNC is under a federal court consent decree currently because of activities in the past that have been misleading or efforts to challenge minority and low-income voters. They've made an effort recently to get out from under that consent decree, and that effort has been unsuccessful because courts have concluded that there's still significant enough concern that we need to be very vigilant against these practices. This is the same RNC, as you pointed out just 2 nights ago, that is sending out misleading and I believe illegal mailings to voters that misrepresent the mailings as official census documents when, in fact, they're not the case. And so we're not going to wait for an election day and then find out that misleading information has been given to our voters. Instead, we're going to vigorously protect people's rights to participate. We should all want more people to participate, not fewer, and that participation is a real hallmark of what we try to do in elections.
As the nation continues to debate this Arizona immigration law, as the president has condemned it, as chatter has risen in Washington that we might actually get a move toward comprehensive immigration legislation in Washington this year, how do you foresee race and that issue intersecting and intertwining getting into November? Obviously, we see the Republicans and conservatives very eager to engage on the issue of race, looking to do it even in places where you wouldn't expect them to bring it up.
Right. Well, they may make that effort, but let's, be candid. This immigration issue is a very, very tough one. It's a huge problem that has needed fixing for a long period of time. If just a fraction of Republican senators who were supporting immigration reform just 3 years ago would join with Democratic senators, we could get an immigration reform bill through the Senate into the House. There is at least one Senate Republican, Senator Lindsey Graham, who is still making some effort in that regard, and that's to be applauded. But all we need is a few Republican senators willing to tackle this issue, and we could make progress. So the question is out, will they do it, or will they just be the obstructionist party that they seem to really relish becoming here over the last year and a half?
That said, Senator Graham, after having written an op-ed with Democratic Senator Charles Schumer just last month, having long championed the idea of immigration reform, having put forward a bipartisan plan of his own, now saying that he does not want that to be worked on anytime soon. He wants that to be put off until 2012. I wonder if you see a strategic issue here on legislation that really dovetails with politics. Are Democrats going to be trying to get as much done as possible before November in order to campaign on that fact, while Republicans try to slow everything down?
Well, Rachel, I think the answer to that is yes. We're going to be trying to get as much done because I think people wanted us to be the governing party to break through a Washington logjam where special interests kept things from being done. As I travel around the country, I think the main critique of Washington has been that you can't get meaningful action because the special interests have basically locked the place down. So what we have attempted to do with this president and with this Congress is take big steps forward on economic recovery, on reforming student loans, on reforming the healthcare system, and now we are on the verge of, I think, a very big win in terms of Wall Street reform. We're going to get things done. I hope it's good politics, but we're mostly going to get things done because that's what the American people want you to do when you're in office. They want you to take your oath of office seriously and come here to work, not just to play political games and try to block everything that you can.
Chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Governor Tim Kaine, thanks very much for joining us tonight,
Absolutely,
sir.
Rachel.
Appreciate
Good to be
it.
with you.
Last week's underwater well explosion at an offshore drilling rig operated by British Petroleum has created a serious environmental disaster that is growing more serious by the day. Efforts to stem the flow of oil that's pouring into the Gulf of Mexico at a rate of 42,000 gallons a day have thus far failed. So too have efforts to contain the ever-expanding oil slick that is spread out across the water. The slick is now 100 miles by 45 miles, making it roughly the size of Ohio. Beyond the damage it's already done, the fear now is that the slick hits shore, where it then coats wildlife and the coastline. So far, the closest the oil has gotten to shore is about 20 miles. If the oil were to hit land, which it's expected to be able to do in 2 or 3 days, that would be very bad. Remember the Exxon Valdez oil spill disaster? Thousands of Alaskans volunteering, scrubbing birds and sea otters and seals? Yeah. So in an effort to not be Exxon Valdez, officials have devised what sounds like a scorched earth policy here, or maybe a scorched water policy. They're lighting parts of the oil spill on fire. If you can't clean it, the thinking goes, burn it. The cleanup contractors are using 500-foot fire-resistant containment booms that extend above and below the water to cordon off a small patch of the oil. The oil has to be gathered up to make the slick thick enough to be successfully set ablaze. If the slick is too thin, the fire will go out. Of course, there are health concerns about big oil fires, but the official line is that the plumes of smoke won't reach land. The Environmental Protection Agency and the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality are monitoring the air quality around the burn. Those very warranted health concerns aside, there's also no guarantee that the burn will even work. Some people estimating that as little as 50% of it will burn, and what's left over after the burning is even worse than the original oil slick because it will be thicker and more difficult to clean up. But don't worry, not all the news about this is bad. Oil prices are on the rise, which means that oil company profits are doing great. Plus, this Democratic president not backing off on that decision to end the decades-old moratorium on offshore oil drilling because of concerns of, something like this happening.